Today in the shop, for the first time ever, we have a VR5 engine on the stand. Not only is it the first time ever in the shop, it's the first time ever I've worked on one of these things, and I've really only seen like one in real life, so this should be pretty awesome. I got this engine from my buddy Nick at Open Air Imports, and this thing is gonna go in a future swap that unfortunately I can't tell you about just yet. However, it's gonna be awesome, and I think you're gonna love it. So here's the plan for this engine in this video. We're gonna disassemble a lot of it. How much? I'll be honest, I don't even know just yet. It's gonna depend a little bit on what we find and if we find any real problems. 2, we're gonna do timing chains on it. This thing has 194,527 kilometers, so it's time for chains, plus there's no transmission attached, so we got it nice and easy that way. Also, we're gonna do some comparison between the VR5 to the VR6, which shockingly is a 6-cylinder. So this is the equivalent of basically a 24 valve, like a BDF engine code. It's just a 2.3 liter, so it's a 20 valve. It's a 5-cylinder, not a 6-cylinder. You get the idea. You hear what I'm saying? I think to start, we need to strip off some of this extra stuff like wiring and coolant, and then we'll go from there. Normally, when we tear these things down, we don't rebuild them, but since we're rebuilding this and it's gonna go in a car, we gotta be organized. So, let's stay organized. First up, we're gonna get rid of the spaghetti. Wiring and coolant hoses and whatnot. By the way, I'm just gonna complain for a second. How is someone supposed to get this unplugged, Volkswagen of another country? Look at this, the connector's backwards. You're not gonna find out what car this engine is gonna go in just yet, but just like your virginity, it's gonna be worth the wait. There we go. Now, as of right now, there's not really a method to my madness. My main goal here is not to break anything. The spacing on these, I think, is even tighter than a VR6. By the way, 100% chance throughout this video, I will call this a VR6. Guaranteed. If I do, you can let me know in the comments that I did it. What I'm trying to avoid is having anything get sad on us. So that sometimes means you have to take things apart a little differently than you would normally want to. Ta-da! Oh my gosh. Oh, damn it, that went right through the hose. Shit. So something you may have noticed is the breather pipe right here at the valve cover just crumbling away to nothing, right? Like, half of it was missing. Here's basically where it's supposed to go, and it's all broken. Well, the cool thing is, all those little globules of plastic are all in our throttle body. We'll take this throttle body off in a minute, but for now, I'm just gonna keep working here. These engines have coolant lines, vacuum lines, and electrical connectors all in one sheathing, so we gotta disconnect a lot to get these things out of the way. Also, by the way, you can see our after-run coolant pump nuked. We got coolant dripping all down it. There is a chance, rather than replacing that thing, we might just delete it. I think we can just slide this right through. There we go. This engine has traveled around the world from wherever the heck it came from, out of whatever car it came from. There's still coolant in it. Amazing. Also, in an effort to make sure we stay organized, every bolt so far that I've taken off, I just put right back where it went, which has only been one. We're gonna have this whole timing cover off soon, but I don't wanna lose these bolts. Also, if you're a super tech and you just take all the bolts out and throw them in a basket, great, good for you. I'm too stupid to do that, so I have to be organized. So, how do you like that, Johnny Master Tech? Ooh, we gotta, ow, right on my knee. Dang it. We will likely need these coolant hoses again. We'll probably have to modify them if I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess, but we definitely don't wanna just junk them. How did you get there? Let's get this secondary air pump right here off. That's gonna free up a bunch of space. This may or may not go back on. I didn't even have to take the bolt out, just a little loosened and the whole thing came off. So what this does is this blows air across the catalytic converter, gets your engine up to temperature faster to be in closed loop. Because this car that it's going in is likely gonna be off-road use only, this probably is not gonna go back on. We're gonna put these in the that's extra and I'm not worried about it category. Just based on my eyeball test, this looks like a smaller throttle body than the VR6 one. So once I get this off, I'm gonna grab a VR6 throttle body and we'll measure them and see, because I think that's interesting. There we go. Look at how much yuck is inside of that throttle body. Bits of plastic, oil, sadness. But let's take this one and compare it to the VR6. I had a suspicion that the 5 was considerably smaller. Look at the size difference of those two. Why is that? Well, that is a throttle body out of a 3.2 liter. So for example, this throttle body is about 75 millimeters. This is an 85 mil throttle body. 3.2 liter VR6, 2.3 liter VR6. That's another place I'm probably gonna say it backwards just so you know. And we're gonna put this one back before it goes rogue, like Sarah Palin did that one time. Now, before I get wild and crazy disconnecting all of this stuff, there is something that I generally do whenever I'm taking these wires out, because if you get them backwards, you can end up with some cam adjuster or timing issues. You can actually flip these two solenoid connectors and or these two sensor connectors. So what I usually try and do is put a mark. That way I know, okay, it needs to go to the one that's marked. Sharpie oil markers are what I generally use for this kind of stuff. Anything works that'll be like a permanent marker, in case you're wondering. Buy shit on with my Amazon link. Otherwise, you're gonna have to watch Clash of Clans commercials. A part that I don't actually have is gonna be a coolant flange, but we'll probably have to manage that at some point throughout this process. I think the thermostat housing and flange is the same. I don't think the crack pipe that goes from the water pump area to here is the same. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. What's a crack pipe? That's where you put your drugs in. And I actually, in that regard, I have no idea how a crack pipe works. Oh, Doc, give me some crack. Anyway, welcome to the Humble Mechanic Crack Hour. Anyway, back to what Ray's question was about what the hell a crack pipe is. Let's go to a VR6 that has the crack pipe on display, and I can show you what it is. The crack pipe is named so, I assume anyway, because of two reasons. One, it kind of looks like a pipe you would do drugs out of. Two, they crack. Which one came first? I have no idea. That's just what it's commonly referred to as. It goes into the block right behind this bracket and then goes to the water distribution unit. Now the factory one is plastic. This one's a fancy metal one. I'll be real with you. I don't think you need to put a metal one in it. Most of those last over 100,000 miles. If you don't want to spend the money, put a plastic one in. Most of the time they're fine. So next up, we are going to take the intake manifold off. That's going to open up this whole side. Now, I wanted to actually just get rid of all the wiring and vacuum hoses, and there's, I think, a coolant line that is here as well. However, if we do that, I gotta unplug all the injectors, which are underneath the intake manifold. So what we're probably gonna do, take the manifold off, leave the rest of it. I'll just like zip tie it up so it's not flobbling all around on us. We got a little bit lucky on this one because on my black R32, this bolt that holds the dipstick funnel in broke in the manifold. VR5 apparently has it. VR6s also have it. There's two rubber grommets that go on the end of this bracket for this vacuum system. That slides into the intake manifold. You don't want to lose these grommets. I don't normally do this, but I am gonna hit these with some rust penetrant just to be on the safe side. You really got to be careful with these intake manifold bolts. And the last thing you want to do, especially when this thing is in the car, is round one of these babies out. So high quality ball end, that's what you need. It's always so much easier out of the car. Here is our VR5 intake manifold. It is very similar to a VR6 intake manifold, except it's got one less runner, almost identical. You can even see we got all the ports on the back. So, kind of cool. We're gonna do valve cover next, but before we do that, we gotta get our coils out. That one's got a tiny bit of rust on it. So there's a little bit of water and a little bit of crust in that one. Nothing I'm super worried about. Ooh, that's not good. That one has a lot of water in it. I can see the top side of the spark plug and that's about it. My assumption, two things. One, someone washed the engine at some point after pulling it out of the car, whatever car it was in, right? It was out of some Mark IV or B5, somewhere rest of world. Maybe when it was getting transported, it got rained on. No real way to know for sure at this point. I'll flip the engine over. That'll let all the water come out of it. We'll flush that out before we take the spark plug out. The major thing I don't want to deal with is taking the spark plug out and a bunch of crap getting in our engine, because at this point in time, I'm not planning on pulling the cylinder head. That may change, obviously, but if I don't have to, I'm not gonna. So let's flip it over and let it drain out. Hope for the best. Oh, shit. Christ. There we go. Oh, cool. There we go. We got it out. I bent the crap out of the heat shield, but we'll worry about that in a minute. Oh, Jesus. I forgot how heavy these things are. Since we got our water out, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. I'm gonna spray some WD-40 Specialist contact cleaner and try and break that up. To just try and blow some of the yuck off of around like the spark plugs and that. New spark plugs, no problem. Again, my big concern is crap falling into our engine. So we gotta get some cleaning done in these spark plug wells. So what I thought is we would take one of these little like pipe cleaner dealies and do some cleaning. Is this doing anything, you ask? Actually, I think it is. It's kind of working pretty well. Let's get our valve cover off next. Now, I probably already mentioned this, but we are gonna do chains on this engine. And in order to do that, we gotta take our valve cover off. Now, initially, hadn't planned for this to be any kind of like hyper fancy engine rehab kind of situation. But the more I think about it, the more I kind of like the idea of getting this valve cover powder coated. The car that this is going in is actually kind of gonna be a show car. Plus, I think it'll look cool. It's a bit crusty on the bottom. I don't love that. Usually, the crustier it is up at the top, the less well an engine was maintained. Not a huge deal, honestly. And like, what the heck are we gonna do about it anyway? Nothing. Just wanna make sure we're good. You know, we don't wanna do all this work and then end up having some kind of engine issue. So now that the valve cover's off, I'm gonna rotate the engine around and we're just gonna inspect the cams. There's more testing that we're going to do, but I got this engine on a pallet. Did it run before it was pulled from a car? I think so. I don't know. So some of this is a discovery for everyone. I don't see any major red flags here. So it looks like all of our valves are opening well. All good things. I do think what makes sense to do next is to flip it over and pull the oil pan. It would be nice if this were a little bit better maintained, but I'm not seeing anything that's gonna like stop us from kind of the main plan, which is just timing and send it. If you're just doing timing chains, you don't have to take the oil pan off, but I recommend it because trying to get that lower cover on with the oil pan and the head gasket, it sucks. Don't do it that way. Just take the oil pan off. Check this out. This VR5 oil pan has baffling in it that the VR6 pans don't have, and that's pretty awesome. So things look pretty good in here. You know, is this the best maintained engine I've ever seen? No. Is it bad? Not really. I definitely think though we are making a good choice by putting timing chains in this bad boy. Now what's probably gonna be the worst part of this whole deal is flipping it back over. Oh, look at all that. Oh, it's going everywhere. Ew! Gross. We have exceeded the amount of pig mats that I wanted to use for this job already. In an effort to show you as many differences between a VR6 and a VR5, let's look at this exhaust manifold because if you know the VR6, you're already seeing a major difference, and that is, this is a one-piece exhaust manifold where the VR6 is two. So these are manifolds out of a Mark V R32. I think this is Pauly D's R30 exhaust manifolds. Two pieces, you can see our runners back at the back, 3 cylinders. 3 cylinders. Secondary air ports there on the backside as well. So these, I don't remember which way this goes, probably like this, would bolt to the back of the cylinder head like that. This manifold, the flange for the catalytic converter, right, because that's the next pipe in line, is 6 bolts. So this reminds me a lot of like the very early Mark IV 2 liters that the cats went bad all the time on. So this is cool. I don't know like flow rate or any of that data, and good luck finding it. Actually, if you can find that, let me know. Post it in the comments so that we know where we can find flow data for a VR5 exhaust manifold like this one. Now, in our swap, I'm a little worried about how far back this sticks out. There's that big heat shield that went over all this. I guess worst case, we pull the manifold off, cut it, make a new manifold using kind of the plate right here that's bolted to the cylinder head. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But the whole point of all this, put chains on this engine. So I'm gonna clean this off a little bit before we start tearing stuff apart. I also have the whole front side of this engine that I need to clean, but we're gonna have a different approach for that. This is more on the timing chain side situation. I don't know what was actually leaking, if it was valve cover leaking down over time or what, but we got a lot of oil on the back side of here. Let's do the coolant flange first. We will likely be putting a new one of these on because they leak often. Oh, great. That's really just terrific. Well, it's so much coolant. Geez, nothing to catch it with. pointlessly put that there. That's irritating. But on a plus note, look at how yucked up that seal is on this coolant flange. The flange is broken and the seal is all swollen and yucked. This is likely from oil leaking on it. Expanding that seal, causing a coolant leak, super duper common. So definitely gonna get a new one of these babies. That's a problem for not right now. This bolt right here that I'm taking off is the tensioner bolt for the upper timing chain. This is the similar style tensioner that the EA 888s have for their balance shaft modules. I think I've only actually seen one of these fail. This one looks pretty crusty though. So since I dropped that on the ground and it came apart, let me show you what it looks like. So here's the threaded piece. There's a little hole in it that oil can go through. There's a spring that lives in it, and then there's a little sleeve. And this pushes up against the rail behind this cover. You'll see that in a second, to hold it to keep tension on the timing chain. Good thing we have a new one of these. See all the crusty on the back side of the cover? It's actually not horrible, but we want to make sure we clean that before we go back together with it. There's also, this is a really common thing people forget. There's a seal right here. If you do chains and you don't put this seal in, you are going to have a gusher of a coolant issue. There's also an O-ring right here that a lot of times people forget about. This is the oil feed, I think, for the timing chain tensioner. So don't forget those. Also, if for whatever reason you're pulling a cylinder head on one of these, and you have the block resurfaced, or you have the head resurfaced, you need to get the covers resurfaced too. If they take a small amount out of the head or off the block, and you don't do it on the cover, it'll make your covers not fit. Now, I've gotten lucky and it not happened to me, but if they take any more than just a dusting, forget about it. You're smoked. Sometimes these hang up a little bit, and we're working around the rear main for this one, so you gotta be careful with these things. You don't wanna break it. Make sure you look real carefully. Be sure you don't have anywhere that the timing chain slapped and messed up the cover. I had one and it slapped a hole, I wanna say in the upper cover. It was real nice. All right, here's our timing. That first bolt that I took out, that's where it goes. And it holds tension against the chain right here. I'm gonna zip tie these, rotate it around to top dead center, and then we can take our chains off. Everything looks okay. Nothing's broken, like there's no busted chain guide or anything, so that's good. We'll clean up our head gasket a little. I got new guides, new chains, new hardware coming. I don't know the VR5 very well, but this is exactly the same as the VR6. The part numbers might be different, but the setup is exactly the same. So once I get this all off, I'm gonna show you guys a couple of other things you really gotta make sure you look at if you're doing timing chains on a VR6 or 5. How many of you have done a VR5 timing chain, by the way? Let me know, because I've never done one. Let's get this thing set to TDC so we can start moving. Sounds like it's building compression, which is a good thing. Stage 5 cam lock. That's gonna lock the cams into place, and then we'll double check the crankshaft. All right, we are at TDC on the crankshaft. We are at TDC on the camshafts. We'll likely bump it a little bit anyway as we're taking it off and putting it back on, but the important thing is our cams are locked. Shaved tooth lines up with the main cap on the back. There's a timing mark on the front. Listen, I've done like 5 VR6 timing videos of various assorted different ones. If you need to learn how to do timing on a VR6 step by step, I got a video for you. I'll do my best to link that down in the description, but I got you covered. I think that's it, friends. Here's where we're at. Everything's off and exposing our chains and our valve train. Good. Nothing stands out as like, oh my God, this is gonna be a real problem. We're gonna replace the chains, the guides, and all that, and do one more inspection. So overall, pretty happy. And I gotta tell you, if I didn't know this was a VR5 and I couldn't see this exhaust manifold, I'd swear it was a VR6. So our timing procedure should be identical. Chains could be different. The guides and all the guides and chains look the same, but always, always, always just make sure you get the right parts when you're doing this kind of stuff. But I think we're gonna be okay. Let's get these crack loose. I'm not gonna take them out all the way, but I am gonna take them loose. Everybody's loose, especially your mom. We took a small detour for mom jokes here. What am I doing? Let's take these chains off. Look at this chain. Chain wasama-sam. Here's a really important piece of this puzzle. This is called the intermediate gear set. That's what I call it anyway. This bolt, one-time use. The cam bolts, one-time use. No surprise there. If you're doing timing, VR5, VR6, I don't care. You need to look at both of these gears because both of these gears actually wear. And as I'm looking at this one, you can see it's pretty worn. This one probably as well. I feel okay reusing this gear. I don't love the idea of reusing this one. I think I might have one of these gear sets somewhere. I'm gonna look for those gear sets and see if we can replace them. We're this deep and we're doing a swap that, let's be real, a lot of times when you do swaps, you don't wanna take it back out and do it again. And do it again. And since the timing chains are on the back side of this engine where the transmission mounts, that could be a lot of work. But first, I'm gonna take all these parts and we're gonna start soaking them so that we can properly clean them. In this bucket, I have some WD-40 Easy Pods, which is a degreaser to help break up some of that yuck. I'm also gonna fill it with hot water and we're gonna let this soak while we do the rest of this stuff. As I do these timing chains, you're probably wondering, hey man, like, aren't timing chains supposed to be lifetime of an engine? And yeah, I guess. Well, think about it this way. If your timing chain fails, has it not lasted the lifetime of an engine? That to me is like automotive manufacturing BS logic right there. But you'll notice I was a little cavalier, if you will, taking some of these parts off. We are not putting any of this back on. You know where I got that from? One of the finest Nicolas Cage movies, I want to say Golden Hour, but that's not it. National Treasure, that's what, Golden Hour? That's not even close. The next thing we're gonna do is I wanna check to see how much wear this chain has. So we're gonna get a new one, we're gonna hang them both and see which one's longer. I was at a car show not long ago and I saw this dude selling bracelets that were made out of timing chains. $60 homie was charging. Here is our timing chain kit. This may or may not be exactly the same as a VR6. What I can tell you is it looks pretty darn close. If you're the type of person that gets mad about the way people open bags, I've opened these all like a savage. Just shut your mouth about it, it's fine. What do the kids say? Put the fries in the bag. This is our lower chain situation. Goes like that. Our upper chain, that is the messiest version of what your timing chains look like. This is a system of the car that links the bottom end to the top end and makes sure everybody turns at the right time. Blows your mind, right? The positives of a timing chain are that there should be no service interval, it should last a lifetime, and so on and so forth. That's great, right? You don't have like a $1,400 repair at 120,000 miles like you might if you had a timing belt. However, because there's no service interval, most people never service it because why would you? Which can lead to like what we saw, which is just a bit of wear on all the parts. Or in a worst case scenario, usually it's one of the guides that break, causes the timing chain to be loose, bent valves, piston and valve do kissy, that kind of stuff. So my next step might seem a bit like overkill or unnecessary, but remember, this engine, no history idea of what's going on. It's a swap engine, which means it's going in a car that may present some challenges to do anything to this once it's in there. So I'm gonna take the cams out and we're gonna do a cylinder leak down test on all 5 cylinders. We could do this differently, right? With the chains on, we could roll it around to TDC on all 5 cylinders. I'm right here. This will give us another opportunity to look at the cam journals, make sure we don't have any issues there. Remember, I already broke these loose. We gotta take them off to do our timing anyway. So no big deal. Next, we'll take our front cover off. Now, if you're in a position where you're taking this off, you want to be real careful. Don't just pry it off on one side. You want to work this out a little at a time. We're looking real fresh inside of there. There's also this screen right here. You want to make sure that guy's not clogged up. All right, moment of truth. Cam out. Journals look pretty good. Make sure we get those cleaned up real good before putting our cam back in. It's pretty much what I'm looking for when I'm taking cams out, looking at journals, looking for a handful of things. One, in the journal right here, I'm looking for any scoring or signs of oil starvation. Maybe it's blue. Maybe there's deep gouges in it. None of that is what we want. I'm also looking at these rollers right here for the rockers to be sure that it doesn't have any of the same kind of issues. And other than having some discoloration in the top of the cylinder head, which is not abnormal really, everything on that side anyway looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy about this. Now I gotta take those spark plugs out that were all crusty dusty. Hopefully they are on good behavior. As long as they come out. Yeah. Probably could have got away with not replacing those. Oh, there's something in it. That was what was in the cylinder, or the spark plug well, rather. It's like a little piece of plastic straw or something. Well, now that that's out of the way, that's better. 3, that one's a little crusty. This is the one I was worried about because that was the one that was full of water, but it came out okay. So we'll just put some new ones in, be good to go. But honestly, we probably could have ran these and it would have been fine. With the cams out, I'm gonna do a cylinder leak down test. Here's what that's gonna check for. 1, how well the valves are sealing. 2, how well the head gasket is sealing. And 3, how well the piston rings are sealing. Since our cams are out, all of our valves should be shut. That should make this a little bit easier. And we got to inspect our cam journals and cams and all that stuff. So we're gonna start with cylinder 1 and just work our way down. And then all I'm gonna really do is just roll this valve till this gauge hits about 80 PSI. We're at 90 PSI. There won't be a compression or stroke or anything like that because we don't have no cams in it. At 90 PSI here, 85-ish minimum PSI on this gauge. You can see we're at 65. So I'm just gonna wiggle this a little bit and see if we can get that to pop up. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Basically, almost no percentage of leak on cylinder 1. If this engine hadn't been ran in a while, you could have a piston ring that's stuck. What you could also do is take some oil and squirt it down into the spark plug hole. That oftentimes will seal you back up. So this is good. We're gonna call this a win. One time we had an engine issue at the dealership and the tech working on it called Techline. The guy from Techline's like, hey, make sure you do a compression test on that engine. The technician told the guy at Techline many times, the engine was out of the car. Ding dong. So that one was super low. I'm gonna just spritz some oil down in here. There's building some compression. Not great news for cylinder 3. You can see we're at 62 or so, 4 PSI, and we got only 10 PSI in the cylinder. Sounds like it's coming from the bottom, which would mean a piston or piston ring issue. I'm gonna do 4 and 5. We'll come back to 3 and see what we get. We get this one to about 80, which is lower than I'd prefer. That puts us at about 10% leak on cylinder 4. Cylinder 5 is great, 2%. So cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 5 are all about 2%. Cylinder 3 and cylinder 4 are not happy. I got 11% on 4, which, you know, if that was the only issue, we'd probably manage it, but having that bad of leak down on cylinder 3 is very no good. So what are we gonna do? Let's do this. I'm gonna roll the engine over so that the chain side is facing up, charge the cylinder back up with the leak down tester and see if we can see anything coming through like the piston rings or whatever. I squirted some oil down in cylinder 3, rotated the engine around, looked down in the bottom side. I didn't see anything that like stood out as problematic. Piston for 3 is all the way up. So let's see what our leak is. That's 20 PSI on the leak detector. I'm pretty sure we got an exhaust valve leaking. Actually, I hear it a little bit over here too. So you can hear this burbling sound, and then you can hear this out of the exhaust. You know, 2 things wrong is even better. Let's try something fun. Sometimes if there's like a little Brit or whatever, tapping those exhaust valves will cure that and the cylinder will seal back up. But even after that, we got some leak. So I'm at 90 PSI on the gauge coming in, and I'm at 45 or so in the cylinder. And I mean, you can hear it. You can hear it leaking out. So I think we might have solved our exhaust situation. I don't hear it or feel it coming out of here. I'm getting a little bit better sealing. It's like it'll seal tighter and then the gauge just drops. So I'm going to talk to owner of said engine, figure out what the heck we're gonna do about this. This is why we did this test, right? We wouldn't wanna find out we had a mechanical problem with our engine after everybody's in the car. All right, we may have averted a crisis. Something to keep in mind, generally you want to do leak downs with the engine warm. So what I did was I put some oil in cylinder 3 and in cylinder 4. Our leak down now is right in line with the rest of it. What that says to me is we probably just got some gunk in the piston rings. Is this worth rebuilding? Bottom end? That's what I have to say. I don't know, honestly. I'm much happier with this result. Odds are this would be fine, right? We'd probably put a little bit of treatment in the engine anyway, once we get it back together and the car running. Let's see what 4 is. So what this does for us though, is it does kind of prove out that we did have a piston ring not sealing up. You could probably go either way on doing this, whether like as far as the rebuild is what I mean. So if it was a piston, there would be a broken piece and putting oil would it would do nothing. It would just shove the oil back right out of the bottom. This is like filling up tiny little gaps. On cylinder 4, which you remember we were pretty well twisted up on, here's our reading now. After a lot of debating and kind of thinking about where we're at right now with this engine that is going to be swapped into another car, we're gonna keep going. I gotta know exactly what's wrong with this piston ring situation, because the last thing I wanna do is put a questionable engine into a car and now we have a misfire on cylinder 3 and cylinder 4 and we're pulling it all back out. So we're gonna start taking some parts off and get to a place where we can inspect our pistons. I've already done our specialist penetrant treatment on these exhaust manifold bolts because they're a little crusty. I'm gonna get some heat to it as well. And you may remember the last time I used this, we had a small thermal event. We're not gonna have that this time. Come on, I said nothing was gonna catch on fire. That was the gasket that caught on fire. There's also another fire extinguisher right here.
Like 4 of them.
And we have the shop door open, so I think we're gonna be all right. I hope anyway. Minus that small, tiny thermal event. Last thing we want is one of these to break off in the cylinder head. Although we're probably gonna send it to the machine shop, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. We got a lot to take off of this guy, so let's start taking off this guy. Time to get off some guys. Here's a... And by guys, I mean the injector connectors, by the way. Bere's the thing. These injector connectors, they get really brittle and are very easy to break. You better want to use some silicone on them. Jeez Louise. There's that. And we got one more. Yeah, come off there. I think we got a new one of these babies coming. So now we can get this whole spaghetti harness out of here. Now, what? That's a VR6 wiener right there. Oh Lord. Next, let's get this oil cooler off of here. I think these are 6 mils. The thing that makes me happy though, Paul also gets to do more work because he's getting all of our gaskets, so that's fun. He'll be putting the fries in the bag. Oh yeah, just drip. That's kind of gross. We'll clean this baby up another time. When we go back together with it, I'll show you a cool way to deal with these alternator bolts. But not right now, you gotta wait. If you're taking out a compressor on similar vintage of Volkswagen, be careful because sometimes on the lower bolt hole pass-through, there's a sleeve that you gotta be mindful of. I don't know if this one has it or not. It doesn't look like it. Don't put yourself in that predicament is my advice. The hope is with this swap that we can use the power steering pump from the VR on it. That would be ideal, I think. Little tip, if you're doing a water pump, the VR5 and 6 look very similar. These triple square bolts are really shallow, so you really want to make sure you get your tool in there so you don't strip them out because they're also recessed. It's a bad spot to have to extract a bolt. We also, I believe, have a new water pump. So this part was going to happen either way. You may be wondering why I'm taking all this stuff off just to take the cylinder head off when I don't have to. Like, you could leave all this stuff on and take the head off. If we, which we probably are gonna take it to the machine shop, it needs to be bare as possible. We don't need to take valves out or anything like that, but they're going to put it in the hot tank and clean everything. So we can't have our injectors in there. We can't have all the electronic BS on there. It's gotta be pretty empty. There we go. Yay. Ooh, it stinks. Oh my God, the fuel in there stinks. It really smells. We got some O-rings that got stuck in the rail, but we don't care about that. We have new hardware, new seals for the injectors. Normally when I take the last injector out on a VR6, I say ×6, but this time I'm gonna say ×5. So that's fun. You know what would be fun? Let's do a little side-by-side on a 5 versus a 6. Let me take this guy off real quick. There we go, VR6 v VR5. Quite a bit smaller, as it should come as no surprise. So we're at about 18 inches with the valve cover on the 5, about 21 with the valve cover on the 6. Cylinder head alone, 15. Cylinder head alone, 17.5. I really think for this swap, this 2-inch shorter engine is gonna work out to our advantage. I really do. We'll do another compare when we have all the covers and everything on this one as well, just so they look a little similar, but that's pretty cool, right? VR5, 2.3 liter, 20 valve. VR6, 3.2 liter, 24 valve. So normally, when you send a head out to get machine work done, you have to take as much out as you can, including the rockers. So what I did was I just poked a bunch of holes in a cardboard box, just like this, wrote timing chain on the back, so we know which side the timing chain was, and then I just take them out and pluck them in the same order that they are in the engine. That's done. Let's get this cylinder head off of here. For cylinder heads, we break out the big boy. Those are some tight bolts, friends. Also, these are 2 different lengths, which is pretty VR common. Make sure we got all our bolts. Moment of truth. That should lift right off, is what I was about to say. And here we go. That's heavy. Let's get the gasket off of here. Gross. I know there's a little bit of yuck in here, but nothing major. Our valves all look nice and closed. So, 1 cylinder head, which leaves us with a block full of oil, at least in 1 cylinder. So there's definitely some chunks in cylinder 3. Oh, look at, yeah, there's a bunch of crust inside of here. It might have been all right, but also it equally might not have been all right. I'm glad we did what we did. If it were my engine in a car that I owned that was not my daily driver, I would have rolled the dice. It's a much lighter of an engine now, though. By the way, not all VRs have this little plate here. It's kind of strange. Ta-da! You may remember this is where our intermediate gears were bolted to, the big one and then the small one. That connects our upper and lower timing chain. This gear connects to another piece a little lower in the engine, or deeper in the engine, I should say. That is what drives our oil pump. This is a vital part of the operation. If you forget that, your engine will last like 4 seconds and then nuke. Fresh rebuild, nuke. So bottom side, we got to get our oil pump off. I still got to deal with this crank gear in some capacity. This oil pump will probably reuse. Usually these are pretty solid. It just needs likely some love. Let's get some pistons out. Unlike when we normally do these engine teardown videos and it's like, oh my God, this engine, this piece is cooked. These bearings, they look fine. Full of yuck. So what likely happened with that other piston is some carbon got the rings bound up and they couldn't expand out all the way, pushing against the cylinder wall. And that made us have really bad leak down. You could hear it leaking through. So we'll clean these and we will re-ring them because we got them out. So that's what we're gonna do. This is the one that was all hung up and you can just see all that crust on there. It's not the worst I've ever seen, honestly, but just enough to cause some issues with the rings, unfortunately. Yeah, that one's pretty crusted up. Look at that. Well, the good thing is all our bearings look good. We're gonna replace them anyway. The good thing is though, we don't have any wear on the skirt, nothing's broken, we don't have a ringland blown out or anything like that. So our pistons are still good. Maybe worth, and honestly it's gonna depend a bit on price, putting some ARP hardware for the rods. The rod bolts are a weak point apparently on these VRs, so doing that upgrade's not a bad idea. Ugh. Gotta take off this front cover. Just juice everywhere in this thing. Okay, our next step and final step are the mains. There's one. Oh, the bearings look great. Awesome. Not bad for 100 and, what did we say, 17,000 miles? Not bad at all. 4, we're gonna do last. Why do 4 last, you ask? Because 4 is the one that has our thrust washer in it, which I'll show you what that is in just a moment. And 4 is usually the hardest one to get out. In addition to the main bearing, has these guys right here. What these do is these control how much movement the crankshaft has front to back. There's a bunch of different styles. This is pretty common VR setup. And then we're gonna take our pulley, we're gonna put it back on so we can store our crankshaft. Ugh, Christ, that's heavy. Okay, I think it's pretty safe to say that that escalated very quickly and way more than I had ever planned. Here's what's gonna happen next. I gotta get this accessory bracket off. I gotta get the bracket that's holding it on the stand off. We gotta load up the block. We gotta load up the cylinder head in the car and take it to the machine shop. They'll hot tank it. They'll check everything, check the deck on both the head and the block, hone the cylinders, probably do valve seals, but we're gonna let them test that and see if we have any issues. Then I'm gonna get it all back. I'll clean all these other doodads and bits and bops. We'll assemble the engine. In the next video, we might get some powder coat action happening to make a freshy fresh like the purple engine. And I have a lot of work to do, so I'm out. Bye.